All right, and we're back. Fan Forum, ShowBeout.com, Joel the Mouth, and right now it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the show a guest we've had before. He's host of the Phinsiders on 940 Wins here in South Florida. You can also watch the show on the Phinsiders.com. He's also the co-host of the Dan Marino podcast, which, if you haven't heard it, it's really good. He is Jesse Agler. Jesse, how you doing tonight, bro?
Good, Joel. Thank you for having me back. Good to be here.
Oh, no problem, man. Now, when we had you on earlier, it was before the start of the season. We were talking about quarterback play. Possibly 8-8, depending on how Henny does. And now we're at week 12, and this is a whole completely new season, it seems like. We're on a 3-game winning streak. And what has been central to this Dolphin turnaround, in your opinion?
That's a $1,000,000 question, one I don't have an answer to. If I did, I'd probably get promoted within the organization. The football side would want to pick my brain if I had the answer to that. It's got to be a combination of things, right? You can go 7 to 3-7, first team ever to do that, by the way. And I think it means a lot of things are starting to go right. I would probably point to the defense before I would point to the offense. Not that the offense hasn't been much better than it was earlier, but the defense has been suffocating. And I think that gives confidence to the offense, and it really just changes everything. Not allowing a touchdown 3 straight weeks in 2011 is insane. Yeah. Not like 2000, not 1990, not 1970. Like 2011, when every week there's a team putting up 40 points. They've gone 3 straight games without allowing a touchdown, the 4th time in franchise history. I think it's a tremendous accomplishment. Obviously, I talked about the offense. Also, earlier on in the season, they weren't scoring any points. It was field goals, not touchdowns. They weren't converting on 3rd down. They weren't converting in the red zone. All of those things now have corrected themselves, or have been corrected, I should say, by the Dolphin coaches and players, and I got to give the team a ton of credit. At 0-7, it would be very easy to fold. It would be very easy to just say, man, this is terrible, to hang your head and to not really put full effort forth. Did team ever stop putting out full effort and finally paid off the last 3 weeks?
Oh, absolutely. And, when Sparano was talking earlier in the season, he always mentioned talent and that this team is talented and things have just had happened to the Dolphins. And that's just, it's a testament to what he's done and the attitude that he's instilling in these players. Now, here's another $1,000,000 question I don't know if you have the answer to, but if you're the Dolphins now and you're looking the way the season's going, you're not really in the suck for luck. Is Sparano safe now? I mean, is he showing what kind of coach he really is to take a team from 0-7 to have 3 straights, to have a chance to beat the Cowboys on Thanksgiving?
He's making it very difficult on the decision makers because, and look, all along, I think Tony Sparano is a very good coach in the National Football League. I do. And I know, a lot of fans like to pick on, the excitement that he shows after kicking a field goal, but I don't have a problem with that. And to me, the biggest positive about any coach in any sport is the respect of his players and the fact that they're willing to play hard for him. And he has all that. And again, these guys could have quit at 0-7. Look at the Indianapolis Colts. And look, I think the Dolphins are a lot more talented than the Colts do. But the Colts quit. The Colts they're not interested. And then you can't say the same about the Dolphins. And I think therein lies the difference between Jim Caldwell and Tony Sparano. I think Tony Sparano is a very good head football coach in the National Football League. Obviously, a million and one things are going to go into what happens in the future here, there, or anywhere else. I'll just say that. I think he's a really, really good football coach, and I'm very, very glad to see the team having success under him again.
I mean, and it is great to see this turnaround. A lot of fans were losing hope, and now it brings me to another question. We talked about Henny early in the season. He's out of the picture. Matt Moore has never been healthy. I don't think, in my opinion, he's ever gotten a fair shake in the NFL. 6 touchdowns, 1 interception during this win streak. He's showing me something that I think he's showing a lot of people what he's really made of. I mean, now that we're out of luck, do we go with Matt Moore? Is this our future here at a quarterback for the Miami Dolphins?
Look, I think it's very easy to get behind Matt Moore right now, and that's awesome. I'm behind Matt Moore right now. I'm impressed by what he's done. But I'll let somebody besides myself answer that question for you, somebody who knows a lot more than I do, Dan Marino. You mentioned that Dan Marino podcast. We taped this week's edition earlier today, and I said, hey, Dan, a lot of fans are talking about the fact that, hey, Matt Moore's playing really well. I said, do we know enough about him to make any long-term decisions? And Dan Marino said unequivocally, you have to bring in a new young quarterback. Not to say that Matt Moore isn't the answer, but you can't just rest on your laurels with Matt Moore. He was very strong about this. He was very convincing about this. Dan Marino said, no. You got to bring somebody in, somebody you can groom for the future. And look, obviously, depending on where they end up in the draft and who's available, that can change. But just from a philosophical standpoint, no matter how impressed you are with Matt Moore, Dan Marino told me today that he still thinks that you got to look in a little bit of a different direction when you're talking about the overall grand scheme, big picture of the Dolphin organization. And she plugged, you can hear the whole conversation with Marino tomorrow on Dolphins.com. That part of it I found to be very interesting.
And you mentioned this. if we don't have luck, you mentioned where our draft is going to be. I mean, I think maybe top 5, top 10, of course. Luck is off the board, and you're looking at it now. Who's a legitimate prospect out there for the Miami Dolphins to groom? I mean, who's going to groom him, and who do you think that guy would be for the Dolphins?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part, right? Like, if they keep winning games, they end up drafting 10th, 11th, 12th. The big names could all be gone by then. Everybody needs a quarterback if they're drafting high. I mean, there's only going to be a couple of exceptions there. If you're picking in the top 10, you probably need a quarterback, and that's why you're picking in the top 10. So, yeah, I mean, we got to wait and see how the whole thing shakes out. If they're picking 8th, the 3 guys might be gone. And the other thing is, you got to let Jeff Ireland and his scouts and that personnel department figure out which guys they like and which guys they don't like. Because I can sit here and tell you how exciting and awesome I think Robert Griffin III is, but if the guy pulling the trigger on draft night for the Dolphins isn't into Robert Griffin III, he's not a viable option. So now, look, I don't know that that's the case. That's just a for instance. But I think that's what makes it so hard to talk about it right now. You don't know. By the way, Griffin is a junior who has not declared yet. So right now, you don't know who the Dolphins are going to end up. You don't know which quarterbacks are going to be in the draft. You don't know what the personnel people think of those quarterbacks. So it's really hard to handicap it right now. It sounds like a total cop-out answer. Maybe it is. But I don't know. Like, I mean, we'll have to see. I can't give you any kind of real answer.
Oh, that's true. I got 2 more questions here now. First one, big game coming up against the Cowboys. I think that the Dolphins have a legitimate shot to win this game the way their defense has been playing. I know DeMarco Murray's been huge. Tony Romo is 18-2 in November, so we know what they can do. I saw your tweet today, and by the way, you could follow Jesse at Phins Jesse on Twitter. The Dolphins are 5-1 all time on Turkey Day. What do you think their chances are of beating the Cowboys?
I think they got a pretty good chance. You know, somebody today on our show, they're like, hey, Tony Romo's 4-0 on Thanksgiving, and you just brought up the great November record that Romo has, 18-1, and I bounced back with that other side. Okay, the Dolphins are 5-1 on Thanksgiving. None of those things mean anything to me. You know, I'm not a big trend guy with that kind of stuff. Oh, Romo is Thanksgiving. I don't know. To me, it feels like it's just one of those mathematical oddities because it is anything else. And so I don't put any stock into any of those things that we just talked about. Romo's record in November, Romo's record on Thanksgiving, the Dolphins franchise record on Thanksgiving. I think the Dolphins have a chance to beat the Dallas Cowboys because the Dolphins are playing really well right now. And Dallas is also. So, you know, that's certainly not to take anything away from them. I think the defense is suffocating right now. And I think the defensive line is doing such a good job of controlling up front, allowing the linebackers to make plays, and allowing guys to get to the quarterback and make things difficult. And the secondary is playing really well. Last week, man, they were flying around and they were hitting against Buffalo. They knocked 2 guys out of the game that are now going to IR still. They ended 2 guys' seasons last week with the way that they were hitting. Jeremiah Bell, Tyrone Colbert, Burnett, Dansby, they were thumping guys all afternoon against Buffalo. I think they're going to bring that same energy, that same passion, that same hard-hitting mentality to the game against Dallas, and we'll see how it plays out. And, you know, the Dolphins got to be able to score some points, though. I don't think, you know, this is going to be one of those deals where you can win it 15-13 or anything like that. With DeMarco Murray, Dallas is going to be able to put up some points, and with Tony Romo and those wide receivers, they're going to be able to put up some points. So the Phins, they're going to have to continue to do well on offense, and that's obviously a challenge because we've only really seen it for the last few weeks.
Yep, and that's true. Now, finally, before I let you go, I saw you guys had on your website about your favorite Dolphin Turkey Day game. I'm going to give you mine. I'd love to hear yours. Mine, of course, being that I'm only 31. Great memory is the Leon Lett snow game. How could you forget that? Is that your favorite, or you have it different?
Yeah, I'm 29, so I'm with you. I mean, that's it. You ask the older people what it was, they'll probably point to 1977. Randomly, the St. Louis Cardinals hosted Thanksgiving for 1 of 2 times in 1977, and the Dolphins had not been playing well. I think they had lost 4 straight going into that game. Cardinals were red hot. They had won 6 in a row, and the Dolphins were a very motivated team that afternoon, and they absolutely demolished the Cardinals. I think the final score was 55-14. Reese threw 6 touchdown passes, and there was a giant bench clearing brawl. So for that generation, I think 1977 is a great memory on Thanksgiving, but definitely the Leon Lett game for me. I think that might actually be the most memorable Thanksgiving game in the history of the National Football League. Just an incredible turn of events there. It was cool because it was snowing, and that made it different, you know, than most of the other Thanksgiving games. And then obviously the bizarre finish. And Leon Lett, lovable Leon Lett. He did it in the Super Bowl, you know, his silly play when he got run down by Steve Tasker, celebrating a bit prematurely, and then he pulled that stunt on Thanksgiving in 1993. And I was actually rewatching the highlight today. We were showing it on our show. And, you know, the funny thing about it is Leon Lett is just so excited that the field goal has been blocked. And I didn't remember this, but when he approaches the football, he almost slides into it like a baseball player going into second base.
You know what they said?
He lost his footing or whatever, and he just kind of pushed right into the ball and kicked it towards the end zone.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that? I saw one of these NFL countdown shows. He had never really been in on the field goal block team, and they didn't really think he was going to cause any damage.
Wow. That's funny. I did not know that. I'll tell you this, though. Phins, who I work with regularly, who played in that game, obviously, the Dolphins, and he told me that the night before the game, so Wednesday night, they're in the hotel having their final meeting. Mike Westhoff is the special teams coach, of course, at the time. And Westhoff said, hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but remember, if we get a kick block and they touch it, we can recover it. And Keith said Westhoff had never mentioned that before in a meeting, but mentioned it the night before that game.
Oh, man, that's crazy. Well, Jesse, I want to thank you for coming on, man. You and your family have a happy Thanksgiving, and I'll probably get with you near the end of the season, man.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man. Later. And that was Jesse Agler, man. 940 wins. Thanks once again for Jesse for coming on. And we'll be right back.